Personal log, Captain Choros. The War Master has honored our pack with a mission of great importance. A mission that will steer the course of the Banished's destiny. We are charged with recovering ancient slipspace shards to activate a great portal that will allow Atriox and his chosen few to return to our brothers in the galaxy. They are housed in the bowels of the Forerunner Dreadnought, the very ship that ferried truth to this place, this Ark. It has been long since I've strolled through these dark halls, back when I played guard to scores of scribes and clerics. I know the inner workings of that vessel well. That is why I have been chosen for this mission, to guide my pack brothers, my chieftain, to where the shards might lie. I have stood vigil within this cockpit as our phantoms travel to the site where truth landed in the final days of the war. As we draw near, I find my thoughts lingering to the one who I once served under in the Covenant. A mighty warrior, my uncle. In my youth, I believed him to be godly, a liberator who wrested power away from the cruel Sangheili, the strong right hand of the High Prophets. He saw the divine beauty of this mighty vessel, as well as the purity, the righteousness of the great journey. Yet, in the end, his devotion failed him. He was truth's relentless enforcer, the butcher of the Sangheili, the chieftain of the brutes. His name was Tartarus. Tartarus began life as all Jurhanai did, in blood and fire. Born on the smoldering surface of Doisak in the human year of 2491, he was nephew to the pious and venerable war chieftain Maccabeus of the Ratol Skeen, who wielded the mighty warhammer known as the Fist of Rakt. This weapon was named in honor of Tartarus' ancestor, the Chieftain Rakt. For many generations, the Ratols were bitter rivals to the Velioths, another Skeen that favored the advancement of technology, whereas the Ratols held to the old beliefs that might makes right. Their enmity sparked the Great Immolation, a war that set Doisak ablaze in nuclear fire. A war that led to our incorporation into the Covenant. Though many older chieftains chafed under the Covenant, Maccabeus led an alliance of young chieftains who eagerly adopted the Empire's tenets and served with extraordinary zeal, showing a depth of devotion that impressed even the High Prophets. His devotion allowed him to become the first Jurhane shipmaster within the Covenant Navy. The Prophets gave him command of a warship, the Rapid Conversion, despite the objectives by his merciless Sangheili overseers. In retaliation, they disabled many key features aboard the cruiser, such as weaponry, gravity lifts, and other useful components. All these things mattered little to Maccabeus, for his faith in the journey allowed him to turn a blind eye. The war chieftain took his nephew in and made him a captain under his command. Tartarus was charged with safeguarding the Huragok, who replaced the Yanmei aboard the ship, for the bugs were ever resentful to the engineers. They would all be eventually joined by other, greater dangers, however. Maccabeus' ship and crew would be one of the first to make contact with humanity. Upon their world of harvest, Maccabeus, his nephew, and the pack represented the Covenant hegemony at the gathering with the humans, intending to broker peace with these aliens. What began as a mission of peace soon turned to bloodshed, however, and a mighty battle ensued, leaving the conversion badly damaged and Maccabeus straining grievous injuries, bringing his nephew, Tartarus, to do precisely what he had done to his father. Kill him, and take both his warhammer and his seat of authority among the pack. Once the rapid version was repaired, Tartarus scorched the surface of the planet, reducing it to cinders, setting into motion the Great War with humanity, the War of Annihilation. That laid the foundation for Tartarus' rise to power. News of the new Chieftain's exploits soon reached the ears of the High Prophet of Truth himself. Unbeknownst to most, the Prophet long desired to remove the Sangheli from the halls of power and reign supreme over the entire Covenant. Now, he found the perfect enforcer. Throughout the war, Truth bestowed offices and honors upon Tartarus, and soon enough, he gained near total control over the entire Ritol scheme. Near the end of the conflict, he was crowned Chieftain of the Churl-Hanai by the High Prophet, giving him total control over the entire Churl-Hanai in the Covenant. And in all that time, he schemed with Truth to undermine the Sangheli. He would convene with His Holiness behind closed doors, far from the ears of his Sangheli protectors, even from his fellow hierarchs. As the war progressed, more and more brutes were given command over lances, armies, ships, even entire flotillas. One such was a mighty armada, poised to strike at the human homeworld itself, with a great battle station at its head. Unfortunately, this fleet was shattered when the humans stumbled upon it by destroying the command station, the unyielding Hierophant. In order to keep the truth from the Sangheli, Tartarus made certain there were no survivors, but he did recover the fragments of a treasured slipspace crystal that was discovered on a human planet. He returned them to the Dreadnought with the thanks of the High Prophets. It is these shards that we seek now, but I digress. This was but a minor setback, however, for the Sangheli's fall was sealed by another calamity. The first of the sacred rings discovered by the Covenant was destroyed under Thel Vadim's watch. Tartarus himself witnessed this Four-Jaws fall from grace, for he stood vigil before the High Council as the Supreme Commander was made to account for his failure. My uncle was even given the honor to brandish the mark of shame upon the Sangheli's breast for all of High Charity to see. Yet, the Four-Jaw would ascend to the mantle of Arbiter not long thereafter, and Tartarus aided him in his journey for redemption. They first ventured to the gas giant threshold, where they put down a band of heretical elites, as well as rescued a holy oracle. and when another sacred ring was found, he ferried the Arbiter to the repository of fate, the library that held the fabled sacred icon, an object that was integral to the great journey. Against all odds, be they human or flood, they recovered the icon. It was at that moment that Tartarus turned on the Arbiter, stole the key for himself, and sent Vadami plummeting into the abyss, setting into motion the civil war that would shatter the Covenant forevermore. The Great Schism. By presenting the icon to the High Prophets, they ordained Tartarus as the new military chief of the Covenant. It was he who united all brutes against our cruel Sangheili masters, and he steeled their resolve with divine purpose to end the war with the humans and usher in the great journey for all true believers. To that end, the Prophet of Truth himself gave the Chieftain of the Brutes the honor of beginning the journey within the hallowed halls of the Chamber of Consecration, the control room of the ring. But, unbeknownst to most, he would need a human for that. So, he brought one with him, a female commander, along with the Oracle and a handful of his most proficient warriors. Within the shining halls of the control room, Tartarus was confronted by none other than the Arbiter himself, the very creature he left for dead. Thelvadam attempted to parley with the Chieftain, where he denounced the prophets as deceivers, that the sacred rings of legend were not holy monoliths, but instruments of death. The Oracle echoed his words that its own makers, the Holy Forerunners, had destroyed themselves with these rings during their war with the Flood. But Tartarus would not be swayed. His devotion to the prophets, his righteousness in the path, was too strong to be broken by mere words. He forced the consecration of the icon, beginning the great journey. With the Fist of Rukt in hand and supported by his fiercest pack brothers, Tartarus faced down the Arbiter and his human and Sangheili allies in a mad fury, cutting down many in his path. But for all his ferocity, his strength, his zeal, Vadam laid him low, even when the prospect of transcendence was nigh. For as long as I can recall, I idolized my uncle. To me, he was a giant, the might of all the Jurahanai. Tartarus had united our people and brought them to the heights of power, and his piety was without bounds. The prophets had granted him their favor and gave him the most sacred of missions. Surely the gods themselves would have bestowed their divine pleasures upon him. The prophets promised that those who walked the path would always prevail, no matter the odds. And yet, he failed. It was at that moment that I lost my faith in the Sanshium. If the voices of the gods failed to foresee my uncle's demise, even at the precipice of divine transcendence, what use were they as prophets? Thus, I refused the call to join Truth on the Ark, the journey that was to fulfill all the Covenant's false prophecies. Instead, I abandoned the hegemony and made for Wariel, one of the moons of our beloved homeworld, Doisak. There I gave myself to the repairing of warships in the brimstone dark yards of Ividar Rooks. That was where I met Minas, my chieftain. Like a mighty hammer, he raised me up from my despair, and I found a new purpose, a new pack. He brought me into the ranks of the banished, and in time I came to realize a harsh reality. My uncle was no true symbol of power. For all his might, he was nothing more than a pawn, a plaything of the prophet of truth. Tartarus believed that power can only be granted by following in the footsteps of the gods. That was his undoing. He failed to understand that true power cannot be achieved by blind faith. It can only be seized by those with the strength of will. Those who cast aside their shackles in order to take what is rightfully theirs. Minas taught me that, and since the day he found me toiling among the remains of ship debris, we have forged a bond that I had never known since my uncle's passing. It is this bond that I gladly go to.
Captain,
What is it?
we are approaching the target.
Understood. I will inform the chieftain. This is Captain Choros, and long